Let's talk about growing a writer rather than grading one. And my voice is a little rough from recording my book last week, so I'm going to be taking intermittent sips of tea, and I hope you will too. So let me take a big swig now. Good. That felt good. Oh, let's see. Were there questions? Oh, I'm so glad. Yes, wonderful. So here's what we mean when we say growing a writer versus grading one. Do you remember being in school, some of you, college, high school, even elementary school, and your teacher will give you a writing assignment? So you go home and you start stressing out. You think, oh my gosh, I've got to write this writing assignment. I don't know what it needs to be about. You're holding the pen, and before you even start, you have like the death grip and your fingers are hurting. Or maybe you're just like keyboard paralysis. Like, I don't know what to say. I don't know where to begin. Have you had that feeling? And then you do some reading, you do a little research, you sort of wade into the waters and you start writing. And all of a sudden, a little bit of a flow occurs and you realize, oh, I do have something to say about this topic. Oh, I do want to say something about this topic. And pretty soon you're writing, you're getting the draft done. Then you go and you watch your favorite TV show, and like the next day you come back, you reread the draft. And you're like, oh, yeah, that sounds awkward. And I need to fix this over here. And oh, I forgot to include like a quote or a supporting fact. So you do a little more research and you fit it in there. And you kind of put together this piece. And by the end, you're like, I like what I wrote. If you're in elementary school, maybe you did it all in one sitting, but it's like the story of your favorite toy from your birthday party. Or in junior high, you're writing that report about the state of Nebraska. And you're starting to really feel like you understand Nebraska and you did a good job. And then maybe for high school, it's like an essay. You turn the paper in the next day, and then you just literally forget about it. You don't think about it again. And like a week later, if you're lucky, the teacher sends back the paper, and at the bottom of it, on the last page, there's a letter. There's just like a letter. Now, you start paging through because you want to understand, what does that letter mean? And so you'll see like a margin note, and the note will say something like vague. Or it might say something like more detailed with a question mark. Or maybe you see like a squiggly line under a word, or an added comma, or an exclamation point crossed out. There's no dialogue, but there's like these cryptic notes. Often they're even in red ink. Occasionally, like a real current teacher is going to pick purple because supposedly that makes it feel less critical. But there are notes. And then at the end of the paper, there's a grade. And the grade is a letter. And it's a letter like this: A minus, B, C plus. Or maybe it's a score, 72 over 100. And you're thinking to yourself, 72? Why didn't I get a 73? What could I have done that would have even bumped it up just to a 73? What's the difference between a 72 and a 75? I mean, all of you know that feeling. You've gotten a paper back in college and it's an 89 and you're thinking, just give me the darn 90. I mean, how different is an 89 from a 90 out of 100 points? What's the one thing I could have done differently to bump me up into that A minus category so that I'm not in purgatory with a B plus? All right, so how many of you know what I'm talking about? Anybody? Anybody? I'll wait. See if any of you remember this feeling. When you get that grade back, is your first feeling, I was read? Or is your first feeling, I was evaluated? How many of you, when you get that paper back, think to yourself, I am so glad I gave that paper to that teacher. I really am super happy to know that person read my paper. How many of you had that feeling? If you thought to yourself, out of all the people in the world, I'm so glad Mrs. Ellis is the one who read that paper. How many of you have had that feeling? How many of you have had this feeling? You turn it in and you think, I can't wait to read what Mrs. Ellis writes on my paper. because I know the second I see those comments, I can turn that into a better paper next time, and she's going to be excited to see that happen with me. How many of you had that feeling when you were getting graded? The feeling even when you get an A or 100%. I don't know about you. I used to get a lot of really high grades on writing, and it was always like this mixture of relief and letdown. It wasn't very often that I felt elated the way you would think, because usually here's how I felt about it. 100, well, gosh, I didn't have to work that hard. I could have gotten a 95 and still gotten an A. I mean, literally. Or I might think 100, you know, in that other class, I got a 92. How come one teacher thinks I'm only an A minus writer, and this teacher always thinks I'm an A plus writer? Who's actually right here? I used to have that feeling all the time. It was very rare that when I got a paper back, I felt red. But I'll tell you, I remember one time when I actually felt red. I turned in a paper that challenged the presumptions, the assumptions of my TA in college. I was in a history of Africa class. Hold on. And he was an open atheist, communist, socialist guy who believed that Africa had been destroyed by westernization, and he blamed missionaries specifically. And I chose to challenge that assumption. And so I did all the research, and I wrote this paper knowing that I was representing a view he had just completely decimated. And I worried that his personal opinion was going to give me a lower grade. Like, I could have picked a safe topic, but I wasn't in college for safety. I was in college to learn. That's what I always knew. So I decided to pick a topic where I could learn something. I wondered if he was right. And there were aspects of what he said that were correct, but I thought he was wrong in some key areas. So I used that as my thesis. And do you know, back in the dark ages before the internet, the way you found out your grade is this. You turned in your blue book, or you turned in your essay, and this was a typewritten essay, with a postcard, addressed and stamped. And your teacher, you wrote the name of the class, your full name, the section number, and your TA or teacher would put the grade there. And then you'd know what your grade was on the essay and on the class by postcard before you could learn about it by going to school and seeing the transcript posted somewhere. Okay, so that's how we did it at UCLA. And I'll never forget getting that postcard back, because my TA wrote on the postcard, wow, something along these lines. Excellent job. You've changed my thinking. That is what it felt like to be read. Do you know what? At that point, the A wasn't that interesting. I was blown away that he didn't just give me an A or a B, but that he took the time to tell me I had been read. That's what grows writing. There is a pair of researchers named Knobloch and Brannon. They wrote us a book years ago called Growing a Writer. And they did this research. They went into schools across America, and they did a little longitudinal study over the course of a school year. And they tried to correlate a teacher's comments on a paper with growth in writing. So students would sit down, write a paper, turn it in, and then the teacher would spend all day Saturday. This used to happen with my kid's dad all the time. He was an English teacher, 125 essays to grade. He'd go hole up in some coffee shop and give cryptic remarks for 8 hours. It was exhausting. And then he'd give grades and then enter them in the grade book. Over the course of a year, these researchers discovered that there was literally zero correlation between a teacher's cryptic margin notes and writing growth in the students. Just sit with that for a minute. My kid's dad gave 8 hours on a Saturday when he could have been playing with us to grade papers, and it was going to make no meaningful difference in the student's ability to write a better one next time. What does this tell us? It tells us that grading is a stingy way of evaluating writing. No teacher sees the student's process because they don't have time to engage with it and because they don't live in your home. You have time. You live with your child. You know how much effort they put in, when they got a roadblock, how they overcame it, the additional research they did, whether or not they revised a section. You know this because, hello, they live with you. And you see the effort they put in. You see their pride or their discouragement. You see their willingness to risk writing in a different voice. You see them attempt to sound collegiate instead of like a blogger. And sure, it may fail, but you know that they're taking a risk, not that they're mocking the system. I remember Jacob went off to high school. He wanted to go full-time in 10th grade. The summer reading assignment was Les Miserables. So he read it, Victor Hugo, of course, really hard book. And they had to write an essay addressing one of the major themes in the book. Jacob was a homeschooler entering high school for the first time. He wrote his essay and he focused on the escape from the prison where the main character jumps into the ocean and then swims to freedom. And Jacob called it a baptism into a new life. He declared this as the pivotal moment in the life in this story. And would you believe he got a C on that paper because the teacher, who did not know him, did not know his background, did not know us, the parents, said that he must have plagiarized the insight. He must have gotten it somewhere online, that it wasn't his own work, and that he was lying. Okay, can you imagine how outraged I was? Homeschooling mother, married to a literature professor. I mean, these are the conversations we have all the time at home. Of course it was his insight, blended with some conversation we've had, because we talked about literature constantly at the dinner table, in the car, on vacations. And this teacher gave him a C, did not even show curiosity, did not ask him where this might have come from. And of course, I had to follow up. And I declared that this was his insight, that we were conversing about it at the dinner table. What did she tell me? No more conversations about literature with our son. She needed to know that the work he was doing was his alone and didn't have any of our information in it at all. Friends, that is not how writing grows. It does not grow in an incubator, a test tube, isolated from conversations with people who know more about literature. It grows in dialogue with all of that. After all, isn't that what it is when we read literary criticism? I mean, heavens, there's no way I've come up with all the insights I freely offer. It's because I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm adopting their perspectives, and I'm narrating them back in my own words with my own twist through my writing. Grading focuses on evaluation of where a person was at a moment in time for the benefit of giving them a thumbs up or thumbs down, like do better or you did well enough. How is that about growth? It's not. Brave Writer is about growth, the model that works. And I say this with all the ego and audacity I can muster. The model that works is writing support groups. How do we know this? Because that's what professional writers use so that their writing will get purchased. They're not interested in grades. I've never been in a writing community, whether it is a membership group like the Children's Guild for the Guild for Children's Authors, Writer's Digest, local support groups. I've never been in one of those where the way we grew the writer was having a leader grade the writing with cryptic margin notes. Not once. There is not a writing support group for professionals anywhere that have said, wow, grading works so well in school, let's keep using it into the professional world. Not once. They know. They know. Here's what they know. Writing benefits from readers. real human beings having real reactions, dialoguing with the writing. It comes from people who can comment on the craft, not just fix typos, because we all know spell check, grammar check, final edits, typo corrections. They come after the fact. My book, this book right here, it still has some typos in it, even though this is the third pass of editing. Does that mean I'm bad at writing because they can still find some mistakes? No. What it means is it takes multiple eyes, multiple times to come up with clean copy. So clean copy should never be part of the rubric for grading. That's absurd. Why would I have brilliant content and have my A marked down to a B because I miscited something? I accidentally used a homonym for here. I somehow didn't use the correct internal quote marks in a bigger quote. Why should those mark my grade down when the content of my writing was powerful and moved the needle forward on the argument? It shouldn't. This idea of merging mechanics and content for a grade has ruined writing for millions of people. I was just sitting with a young couple over the weekend. We had them over for brunch. They're, early 30s, music majors. The husband is my podcast producer. He's phenomenal. And his wife is a very gifted vocalist, show choir director, worked in the school system, now has her own podcast and community. She's amazing. And she said, my biggest struggle is blogging. And I said, well, tell me more about that. She said, well, I'm just not a good writer. I said, I really find that hard to believe. You are so verbal and you are a delightful speaker. How is that not showing up in your blog? She goes, well, I used to write and I loved writing. How many times have I heard this story? And I was in 7th grade and they had this story writing club at our junior high. You had to submit a story that got evaluated and you were only allowed in the club if they liked your story well enough to let you in. What? How is that a thing? I literally went ballistic. My boyfriend Jim was like, okay, Julie, calm down. I was like, no, this is outrageous. And Jim says back, yeah, but Julie, I didn't get to play basketball. I wasn't good enough to be on the team. And I said, Jim, basketball is a competitive sport. Writing isn't. A writing club is for people who like writing so they can get better at it in community. It would be like saying because you aren't good enough to be on the basketball team, you're not allowed to play in any of the pickup games. This is an outrage. If you want your child to grow in writing, they need the opportunity to write in a community that supports the activity and gives meaningful feedback so that the child who doesn't understand why their story fell flat has an opportunity to grow, to become a kind of person who knows how to write a cliffhanger or knows how to edit the description from this abundance of flowery language to the one key insight that drives the description forward. And children who love to write, they are the ones who deserve that more than anyone. They deserve a faith-building partner, not a grader, not an evaluator. They deserve someone who is totally on board with them, a champion, a companion, a person who says, wow, you took the risk to write and share that with me. I feel honored and privileged to read your work. And I am going to hold your words in my hands like this, gently, benevolently, with joy and sensitivity. That's how you grow writers. So who's best to do that? Well, obviously you are, because you love your little darling more than anybody on the planet. And in Brave Writer, our online classes and our materials know that's the truth. So when we ask you or suggest to you to take an online class, guess what? I have a subversive hidden agenda that I'm about to make available for you to know. You know what it is? I'm trying to grow you. not just your child. These instructors model the kind of dialogical relationship and reading feedback style that I hope you'll adopt with your own kids, that you'll start to shed Mrs. Ellis, Mr. Nathanson, those teachers who gave you the stingy form of evaluation and not the generous spaciousness of reader feedback. In Brave Writer, we dialogue with your kids. We chat with them. We comment throughout their writing, paragraphs, sentences, whole thoughts, not just vague with an exclamation point. We say things like, "Ooh, you thought the roller coaster was awesome. Tell me more about awesome. What was going on in your body when you got into the chair?" And when you get to the top and you hear it going clink, 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 what did you feel right before you went down the biggest drop? And we might even offer, I remember that my stomach leaped forward. Did yours? Tell me more about the thoughts racing through your mind. What were you thinking about? Like that. Not awesome, vague term, replace. Do you see the difference between that sort of cryptic evaluative feedback or comments versus a dialogue as a reader? I've seen our teachers say things like, "Whoa, I'm on the edge of my seat." Not, "Good job with your opening." Do you see the difference? Not, "I need to see more support." We say things like, "Your argument is building. I find myself wanting to know if there's any data or research that backs this up. That would really drive the point home." Can you hear the difference? I'm going to check comments. You are hearing the difference. Oh, very, very good. Very good. This is the point. If you want to grow a writer, you've got to create an environment where it's safe to take a writing risk. And then you want to know that the person on the other end is gentle and generous, guiding you, giving you some opportunities for development. I love to use the example of LeBron James because, first of all, total fangirl. But secondly, he is arguably the best basketball player of all time, and he still needs a coach. Do you know why? He inhabits his body. He does the miraculous stuff he does. In fact, last night, he missed 2 free throws in a row. The Lakers rebounded, got the ball, and LeBron did a slam dunk to win the game. Okay, I want you to understand, even LeBron James missed the free throws, but he's been coached in addition to his internal understanding, and he's able to make meaningful use of that. He's not being graded, he's being coached. That's what your kids need. They need a coach. They don't need grades. They need to grow. They don't need someone telling them, "Well, that's the best you'll do," or, "Oh, you're not qualified to be in this club of writers because we didn't like your writing yet." No. From 0 to 18, while they're in your world, your number one task is to keep the space safe for writing, to be completely connected to self-expression, where you jot it down for them. Where you jot it down for them, where you read what they offer and you're enthusiastic about it. You see what I'm saying? And when you want to bring correction, it's not about that they failed to do something correctly yet. It's about showing them there's another door they can open to being an even more powerful writer. That's how you grow a writer. So if you are going to raise writers, I think it's worth hopping in on the Brave Writer train. I've looked around the landscape of homeschooling writing programs, and the vast majority of them are about systems. And they use the word writing in their title. We don't. We're Brave Writer, not Brave Writing, because we're talking to people. We are growing writers. We're not improving the writing. Let me say that again. We're growing writers. We're not improving the writing. The writing will improve as the writer grows. We're not evaluating the writing and finding it at fault and hoping you make up the difference somehow on your own, hidden from me, for the next paper. because we have the research, it's in. And literally, no one grows from that. It's not how they grow. Isn't that amazing? When I read that, it was like I dropped the book in the middle of my living room and I thought, what on earth are we all doing? For some reason, I have known intuitively, partly because of my mother's example, partly just because, that you need somebody to be a fangirl of the voice that lives inside you. That's what you need to be a good writer. Let's see. Adrian says, what if I'm pretty sure my kids won't be writers for a career? I just need them to have competence. What's the difference? What's the difference? They don't have to be novelists, but I'm not kidding you. How many adults write to me and say, I was nervous to write you an email because I know you're a writer and I was afraid that you would see my poor spelling or the way I phrase things is too awkward. Competence means every writing task you face, you can face comfortably with competence and confidence. And the amount of writing going on right now is staggering. More than in the history of the world. Every single employee in every organization is called on to write, whether it's emails or some kind of presentation, or they're putting notes together, because the number one way we communicate now is typing. Do you realize that? Most of us don't walk around with a stenographer or a dictaphone and a secretary. We are called on to type our own thoughts. My dad's a lawyer. He's been a lawyer for over 50 years. And he did not learn to type until 10 years ago. Because up until that point, he had a legal secretary and he recorded everything, and then she would type it. But once email came into the world, he could no longer function with only someone else doing it for him. He literally had to be involved in the activity of writing. So he had to teach himself to type, and he had to start mastering that. Now, he's naturally articulate. He's a phenomenal writer. But who thinks about lawyers needing to be able to write cliffhanging suspense? Guess what? Trial lawyers do. How many of you think about people working in an engineering firm and they are making a call for a change? Like they need the department head to change either a practice or a design or how something is going to be delivered. Well, you have to put that in writing. You don't get to just talk about it in an office. And knowing how to write in a compelling way is how you do those things. So one of the things I always like to say to kids when they say, well, I'm not going to need writing, I say, I'd love to just take your phone and your computer for a couple of days and then let me know if you still think that's true. Because we're all posting on Facebook. We're writing opinions after we read editorials. We're sending text messages. We're defining ourselves on dating sites. We're applying for jobs. Did you know just to get a job in my local area at any of the fast food places requires you to fill out a form online? That's not what I did. I used to go in to McDonald's, take a handwritten application, and then have an interview. No, now they expect you to represent all that in writing. There is no job, I know this is a bold statement, in today's economy that doesn't require high-level writing skills. And in fact, all of the people I know that I work with who are in the academic world absolutely tell me that the missing ingredient in all of the sciences, Barbara Oakley just told me this, are great writing skills, even for mechanical engineering. Adrian, you said you don't have the skills to give the feedback I talk about. Right! Enter Brave Writer. That's my whole point. Brave Writer teaches you that. The writer's jungle, that's what it is. It is a manual on how to give that kind of feedback. And if you don't know how, you can sign up for one of our online classes like the Writer's Jungle Online. And we literally enroll you and your child in the class together. And the instructor teaches you, the parent, how to give that kind of feedback. Here's the crazy thing. You're really good at it. You just don't know how to do it for writing. Do you know how I know? You've taught your kids everything. They know how to ride bikes, tie shoes, make muffins, answer the phone, invite friends over, go to the store and ask a clerk where something is. They know how to do research, how to find things in the library, how to use a skateboard. how to decorate their bedrooms, how to hang a picture so it's not crooked. Who's helping them do all that? You are. And you're using your natural voice. Like imagine this, you're in the kitchen, you're making muffins, and your child needs to scoop up the flour. Do you just stand back and wait for them to do a scoop and it's got all the flour too much over the top and they dump it in and the muffins don't turn out, and at the end do you say to them, well, you get a C for the muffins, and then you just go back to your life? Is that what you do? You don't. And you certainly don't eat the muffin and say, wow, floury, and then just let that comment hang out in the air. You don't do that. Here's what you do. You get in the kitchen with your kid, they scoop up a whole cup of flour, and here's what you say to them. Good job scooping the flour. I know a trick for getting it level. See this knife? Here, I'm going to show you. See this knife? You can just scrape off the top and now it's level, and you dump it in. And then your child dumps it in and it's accurate. And now they know a trick for how to make the muffins not be floury. You know how to do this. The thing is, you've got the ghost of public school past living on your left shoulder telling you that's not how you teach writing. And so you doubt that you can do the same thing. So let's say your child's written this little narrative about roller coasters, and the opening line is, roller coasters are awesome. You're thinking in your head, well, that's not a very good sentence. I should tell them to get the thesaurus or to come up with better language. But let's use our model that we just had of baking. Instead of underlying the word awesome and saying to your child, get a thesaurus or not a very good sentence, which is what you might get in a school, here's what I want you to do instead. Read the sentence, get to the word awesome, and go, wow, you really like roller coasters. I want to know more about how awesome they are. Tell me some more. And you start taking notes, showing them that they are now unpacking the experience and you're giving more language to it. Or let's say their sentences are all seemingly out of order. You can't follow the sequence. Couldn't you give real reader feedback like this? Okay, so I was going along, and then I got to here and I suddenly thought, wait, what comes next? And I noticed it was down here. I wonder if we can just move that sentence up. How do you feel about that? Would that make sense? Does that seem to hang together the way you wanted it? Can't we do that? Can't we have a conversation where you give authentic reader feedback, but with total friendliness? One time when my mother taught me, I was writing a story for school, and she taught me how to grab the attention of a reader in the opening, and here's how she did it. I'd written this opening that was very flat-footed. It was something like, we got on a train to go to Mexico. It's very straightforward. And my mom didn't say to me, well, that's not very interesting, or, I don't like the way this opens. She didn't say anything like that. She goes, ooh, what happened before you got on the train? And I paused and I said, well, I guess we had to pack. My mom was like, oh, okay, what did you pack? So I was writing things down. She's writing things down as I'm saying them. She goes, well, do you think kids usually pack just on their own? I said, no, you told us to pack. She goes, well, what might you have been doing at that moment? And I got shocked. I was like, well, wait, I want to just get to the train. And my mom said, what if you lead them to the train, though? Like, imagine if you were eating popcorn and playing a game and your mother came in and said, hey, it's time to pack. And I was like, oh, because now the reader is like on this mystery. They don't know where I'm going. By packing, opening with the packing, I'm enticing the reader to want to find out where we're going. And then she's like, and the easiest way to convey all that without boring the reader is through dialogue. So you and I role play. I'll be the mother, you be the kid, and let's have the conversation. And so we did. And we wrote it all down. And I added it to my story. Now that's coaching. That is reading the paper like a reader. Not like we're looking for all the 5 elements that were in the criteria about what a descriptive paragraph is, and then checking the rubric, which is what we've all been trained to think writing is, and it isn't. Are you getting it? So here's the great news. We sell all this stuff because it's my deepest passion to equip you so that you won't flounder, so that you don't have to rely on a scope and sequence and a rubric to teach writing. You can actually teach writing through your relationship, the connection you establish with your child. The Writer's Jungle, my core manual, and the Writer's Jungle Online, our class that teaches the manual, is exactly the place to start. And the good news is this: we have a whole new season of classes for spring that will open and register on December 3rd. And the binder, the Writer's Jungle, it also comes in digital form, will be on sale Cyber Monday. So if you need to buy something or sign up for something to help you learn these methods, come to my webinar. That's going to happen on, what did we say? On November 20th. Sign up for that. Is that in here? Yes. It is the Natural Stages of Growth webinar on the 20th. Come to that, learn all about the products and how it all works, and then you can make your nice big purchase for a great discount on Cyber Monday. Does this make sense? And we will help you. We will help you become the writing coach you want to be. I love seeing that many of you are new to this thinking, because occasionally I feel like I'm repeating myself. And it's very helpful to realize that we have new to Brave Writer people all the time, and that these ideas are new. So if you are new, or these ideas are unfamiliar, or you haven't thought about them for a while, come to the webinar. Come on Wednesday when I talk some more about Cyber Monday and the webinar coming up. I'll give you a little sneak preview. And then we will build your understanding so that the rest of this school year is going to rock the COSBA, right? You're going to see such amazing growth in writing instead of just grades for writing. My book, The Brave Learner, is available right now for pre-sale, and you get pre-sale goodies when you purchase it. Go to thebravelearner.com. I hope you're listening to our podcast. There's a link to that as well. We're in season 5, and it's an awesome season because the people I interview are such wonderful human beings. So thanks for joining me today. Have a great week, everyone. I'm Julie Bogart from Brave Writer.